You know what this is? This is AI5, the new chip by Tesla, the new inference chip. And we have to talk about it again because what's actually happening here justifies to put some commentary on it, to understand what is actually going on here in terms of crazy performance that we are seeing and what this actually means for robotaxi and for all the others. Let's take a look here. Here is the chip that we are talking about. And before we go into the technical details and why that's so important for Tesla, the stock, Tesla, the company, and for SpaceX and many other companies, we will take a look at the technicalities. Look at this. Here is the new Tesla AI5 chip. And you have to understand how this works. So the bottom is the new AI5 chip, but this on top of here, the Tesla AI4, this is not the chip. The chip is actually here in the middle. Do you see that? These little two eyes, like these squares, are two AI4 chips. The surroundings, the packaging. So here we are talking about RAM and all kinds of other circuit board stuff that will also surround AI5. But AI5 has the RAM built next to the chip, into the chip. And that is very important. I will get to this in a second because we have to talk performance to give you guys not a geeky insight into semiconductor design here, but a big picture insight, how big of a deal and improvement this actually is. So this chip down here, AI5, right? Here, you see this? Am I moving this? This AI5 chip actually goes here where these two squares are. So this chip, this one here, is the chip that will go on a new board that looks differently and will replace on this new board this thing here. It will be two of these new ones and replacing this one and this one. So you just understand how this works. And let's look at the specs and why this is so decisive and gives us a great insight into the fundamental leaps that Tesla is doing here and why Tesla is now becoming one of the largest, if not the largest chip manufacturers in the world. So here, let's look at this. Here are the facts. Let's look at compute power. I wrote this up after some research. Compute power, okay? How does compute power improve? A single AI5 delivers 5 times the useful compute of the current dual AI4 setup used in Teslas. Raw compute is often cited as 8x to 10x higher than a single AI4 chip, or the dual setup in effective terms for Tesla workloads. By the way, if a single AI5 chip delivers 5 times the useful compute, and we have a dual AI4 chip on the others, and we have a dual AI5 chip on the new ones, that does not mean we are 10 times as powerful because normally they are used redundantly. Okay, so if you have 2 of these chips and each one is 5 times, together they're also 5 times because they're not used together. They are basically doubling whatever they do. So if one fails, we have the other one still running, especially important in cars. Okay, so we have 5 times for raw compute, 8 to 10 times higher. Overall real-world inference performance for FSD Optimus can reach up to 40 times better in some metrics due to architectural improvements, better memory handling, and we get to this in a second, optimized transformers, removal of legacy GPU ISP blocks. Let's look at the memory. This is also mind-boggling. The RAM and the memory on the current AI4 computer has 16 gigabytes of RAM. 16 gigabytes. So that's like your computer probably. AI5 is expected to offer 9 times more memory, potentially up to 144 gigabytes. Through final figures might vary due to cost and supply. Some leaks suggest 96. Memory bandwidth is 5 times higher than AI4. This is enormous. So bandwidth means how quickly the GPU can access the RAM, right? What is the actual bandwidth? The throughput. How much data per second can you push through this thing, or per millisecond, whatever it is. So this is pretty impressive. 9 times the memory, but at 5 times faster rate throughput. Crazy. So that's a 10x up here, 5 times faster, but then 9 times more memory with 5 times higher throughput. This is all very impressive. And when you look at NVDA as a benchmark for Tesla specific workloads comparable, this is very important. This does not mean that this chip is actually completely superior or equal to an H100 or a B200 or whatever. Because NVIDIA chips are extremely powerful, they're very hard to beat, and no one can beat them in their own field. But the trick here is that Tesla is focusing solely on inference. not on training. Whereas NVIDIA has to deliver the entire thing, which is an enormously more complex mission, and no one can beat NVIDIA in that. And so for me, it was very, very important to hear that Tesla doesn't intend to beat NVIDIA, because that would be very stupid and futile, and Tesla would fail. But Tesla says we don't want to beat NVIDIA in their own game. We want to win in our game. We want to develop a chip that is vastly cheaper than an NVIDIA chip, but at the same time performs at the same level or higher than an NVIDIA chip for what we actually want to do with it. We want to do inference compute in space, and we want to do inference compute in Optimus, and maybe inference compute in Robotaxi, even though that's not even necessary. We can do this with AI4 completely sufficiently. Elon has made this very clear. But here it is, for Tesla-specific workloads comparable to an NVIDIA H100 or approaching Blackwell dual, right? Dual. At far lower cost per power. By the way, when I say the AI5 delivers 5 times the useful compute to the current dual AI4 setup, that does not mean, and I mentioned the redundancy, that is not true for AI compute in space, right? For actual data centers, that is actually very powerful because you don't need the redundancy. But in cars, maybe in robots, you need the redundancy. So basically what we are dealing with here is, effectively from an Elon and from a business perspective, that Tesla has invented its own chip now. That is the equivalent of a Blackwell chip. Let that sink in. The equivalent of a Blackwell chip for what Tesla actually wants to do. So effectively it replaces a Blackwell chip, because otherwise they would have to buy one for every single AI5 chip. Now they don't have to do this anymore. The cost advantage will be dramatic, both in terms of these chips actually being just cheaper in production than Blackwell, plus you don't have to pay a 70% margin. I would estimate this chip is at least 5 times cheaper in COGS, plus saves you 70% margin on that 5 times higher cost of Blackwell. So I can't even do the math anymore. This is like a 10, 15 times cost saving, which is crazy. It's basically you're dropping the compute costs by 95% when you do the math on that. 95% or more. Why is this so important? Because Tesla intends to become by far, not even close, the largest chip manufacturer on Earth. Or now on Earth. Soon on the moon. But this will take another 10 years. So on Earth, because they have to equip tens of millions of Optimus robots, probably at some point robotaxis, even though that will be probably a slightly different chip or a different variant of the AI5 chip with probably less memory. The robotaxi doesn't need that big of a chip, honestly. But they will probably have a variant of that with less RAM. And they need space compute, space satellites, AI satellites, the biggest business model ever invented. Infinite economics, immediately infinite economics for infinite compute in space. We are talking about pentillions of dollars that will be made in space very soon, by the way. This will not take long. And you know that I'm the most bullish person on Earth when it comes to space AI, because most people, other than Elon, did not fully understand what is happening. Infinite compute needs with the rise of AGI that we witness as we speak, completely bottlenecked on Earth, both on chip production and on energy production. Both bottlenecks being removed in space now by SpaceX and by Tesla. Through SpaceX and Starship becoming commercially viable now. $200 per kilogram to orbit costs and lower, probably by 2027, next year, unlocks infinite build out in space. Everything will go to space immediately. You will need extreme amounts of these chips. And forget terafab for now. Terafab is coming in the future, but this chip AI5, when you look at the performance, when you look at what this thing can do, this will be the backbone for 2027 and 28. Maybe into 2029, but then AI6 comes along. But I would say for 27 and 28, the first gigawatts built out in space will be running on AI5. That is what I think. I think this chip will be mass produced in absolute crazy scale to power this space compute. Much more than Optimus, by the way, because Optimus will be a little lagging compared to space compute. So very exciting stuff. Everything just happens just in time. And you see Elon's commentary, maybe it's in here in these comments, that he actually talks about space and he talks about Optimus, not Robotaxi, where this will be deployed. Oh, I don't have it here. I have to click here. And this is super exciting. It is just in time that Elon got around with this thing. And when you actually read Elon's commentary on this, read Elon's commentary on AI5, you hear between the lines exactly what's going on. Terafab AI, by the way. He said when he worked on this that in January, he said AI5 is his number one priority at Tesla. Let that sink in. Not Optimus, not Robotaxi, because Robotaxi is done more or less. His number one job is AI5 chip design in January. And now they completed it. It is April. Why does Elon say that? Because Elon understands here. You see this? This is Starship. Elon understands that this is coming. Elon knows the timeline. Elon knows that Starship is coming next year, very likely. And at the millisecond where Starship works and brings down that 2-orbit transportation costs, you will have infinite demand for these chips. And so it is absolutely crucial that AI5 goes into production now. So it is ready mid of 2027 latest, ideally in the Q1 2027 at scale. And that's a little tight, let's see. But let's say mid of 2027 this starts. And what people do not understand, where people are completely wrong, completely not getting what's going on, Sam Altman, I mean, he probably knows what's going on, but he's gaslighting us. The build out in space is easy once Starship works commercially. If Starship works commercially in 2027, we will build gigawatts and gigawatts into space before 2030. Mark my words, gigawatts of that stuff. Because it's economics. It's just better. And the idea that we don't know how to build satellites, the idea that we don't know how to build radiators into satellites to radiate out the heat, which is Jensen Huang's theory, this is ridiculous. Elon already solved the problem. Even I could solve the problem. Now, I'm not that smart. I could solve you the radiator problem. This is not very hard. This is all happening in AI5. You have to understand. Energy is not a problem anymore. We have infinite solar in space. We have infinite, 5 times the solar efficiency for a solar panel. Every solar panel in space becomes 5 times more valuable than on Earth because it has 5 times the energy generation per 24 hours than on Earth. So energy, boom, absolute abundance in space, and it's free, and solar panels work, and you have all that energy coming in. So the entire bottleneck of the insane AGI transformation of humanity now boils down to a single point, and that is the chip. It is the chip and the chip only. And the singular chip that will solve that bottleneck for the next 36 months is called AI5. That is the magic of this chip. And that is why Elon is so obsessed with this chip and why he said he needs to be on it. So that is what we have to understand. And then Grok will be one of the main use cases, of course. But there you have the timeline. Then that is why this is so important. And that is why I'm very excited. And you can read between the lines that this is exactly Elon's plan. The chip manufacturing will become an absolute superpower and super source of margin for Tesla. And it will not wait until Terafab. It will happen next year at scale, at enormous scale. Very exciting. I hope that was interesting. Tune in tomorrow. We have a lot of interesting things going on this week. And I hope to see you very soon.